Well, my first exposure to music was in South Philly, where I grew up, where there always was some guys on the corners singing and through radio. In Philadelphia with Georgia Woods and WDAS and Kay Williams and Jocko, all of these guys playing music. And so they used to have Little Anthony and Imperials and Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers and whatever. And so I always loved music. And my whole quest was to find out, how do you get into the music business? How could I get into the music business? And I didn't even know where to start. The first place I went was at the radio station. I found my way out to the radio station. And there at the radio station, I was able to ask questions and try to trail. That was when I was very young, you know what I mean, like 11, 12 years old.
You weren't playing an instrument at that time?
No. I was basically singing.
Sorry, one second. Just to fix that in.
Mm-hmm.
What about for you, Leon?
Well, I started playing piano like when I was 4 or 5 years old, sort of like a child prodigy thing. And my mother played piano. That's how piano got into the house. So it's like basically Gamble says, singing groups. I started playing for a singing group in the neighborhood, like when I was like 10, 12 years old, doing talent shows and playing in school shows. I played drums in school, the marching band thing. And I've been obsessed with music since that time, always singing groups on the corner, winning talent shows, listening to the radio, watching Ted and Mac's original amateur hour, similar to American Idol then, and just playing in bands, local bands, and I've been obsessed with music ever since.
Kenny, you mentioned you wanted to get into figure out how to get into the business, but the one thing that I read that I loved was this idea that you went and used the recording booths at the arcades. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we had a group in South Philly, and they had a penny arcade, and you could make records in the penny arcade. So that's how I got out to the radio station, is that we made a 25-cent record in the penny arcade, and a group of us, we walked out to the radio station trying to get them to play our record. But to our surprise, when we got out there, they said, we can't play this record because it's not a professional record or whatever. But the mission was accomplished because we at least found out where the radio station was at, And we built from there, from that relationship.
What was the technology like in that recording booth?
Oh, it was almost like, when you go to take pictures, pictures where you get 3 or 4 of them, that kind of booth, So we would basically, but the only thing, a record came out. And I can't even remember. I wish I had that record today. It would probably be very, very important, But it was real good.
You both talk about vocal groups like close harmony groups and doo-wop and everything. That obviously was a huge influence on both. You can talk a little bit more about what was it about that music that appealed to you so much?
Well, listen, the first time I seen Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, Little Anthony and the Imperials, the Flamingos, the Moonglows, I was like obsessed with that type of a concept, That's why I wanted to be in a singing group too. But basically that was it, First guy that really blew my mind was Little Richard, and he had a band called the Upsetters, which was a fantastic band. So being as though I was a musician, so I was more into the bands too, and that was basically, what I was listening to or trying to emulate, but that's what I was into.
What about you, Ken? What appealed to you about vocal music?
Well, it just seemed like the music made you feel good, and it was the music of our generation.
Doo-wop.
The doo-wop, The music before that was like the bebop era, you know what I mean, with Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington and all. That was still around a little bit, but this was the doo-wop area, and you had so many groups, so many great groups. And Philadelphia had a lot of great groups like Lee Andrews and the Hearts and the Turbans and
The Dovells.
the Dovells, and I mean, it was just great. And plus, Bandstand was in Philadelphia, so with Bandstand being in Philadelphia, that made Philadelphia kind of like the capital of music, because everybody was coming to be a part of Bandstand, because you could be on Bandstand one day, next day your record was #1 all over the country. It was like the MTV of today, Bandstand.
Tell me about the Dynaflows.
The Dynaflows. Oh boy, we was the most popular group in the neighborhood because we was winning all the talent shows, and I was really rocking on that piano. So it was just five members, and I was the keyboard player, and we was winning all the talent shows, And
How old were you?
about 13, 14, and I was rocking then. So that was what I was doing, and we saw Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers on the Ed Sullivan Show, and they had the V-neck sweaters with the letter in the front, and we was sort of like into that, and we won a talent show at the Canada Convention Hall with Georgie Woods, and we was with Frankie Lyman's brother Louis Lyman, and the Moonglows was on that show, and I thought I was a star then, so that really got me into saying, well, this is what I want to do. So that's basically the path that I took.
Well, radio now pretty much is syndicated, and you don't have the diversity in radio and local input like you used to. You know what I mean? So I think it too is going through a transition. The whole thing is going through a transition, and I think it'll work itself out.
I want to jump back to a little bit of history. You mentioned working at the Schubert Building in Philadelphia, and that was kind of like the Philadelphia equivalent of the Brill Building.
That's correct. Schubert Building was like the Brill Building in New York, right?
And you worked at the Brill Building.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, I didn't actually work there, but I went there as a studio musician. I was invited up to Lieber and Stoller's office, and they hired me to play on the original record by the Ad-Libs called "A Boy from New York City," and I think the Manhattan Transfers did that song too. But when I first went in the Brill Building, and I got on the elevator and got off on the floor. I forget the floor, but I seen Neil Sedaka's name on Burt Bacharach, Hal David, So I was in awe of that. Cal King, Jerry Goff, and Jeff Barry, Ellie Greenwich. So I was right in the middle as a studio musician in Tin Pan Alley, playing on all those records. I played on a lot of commercials with Jerry and Mike, and meeting Phil Spector. He invited me playing on some of his sessions. I played on the Ronettes Christmas album. And the second release after Be My Baby, I think Baby I Love You. And meeting Phil Spector was like, I was meeting a musical god in New York. I mean, this guy was like, the wall of sound. So being in the studio with those guys was like, what can I say? I'm sitting in the middle of greatness, And Phil Spector used to let me come into the control room. He wouldn't allow nobody else because I was real friendly with Jeff Barry. And Phil said, come on in the studio. Come on into the control room. And I sit there and I just watch Phil Spector put that wall of sound together. And all of the musicians that was in the studio, it was a whole orchestra. And Phil used to send everybody out the studio, take a break, and he'll work with them drums for about 2 or 3 hours while the rest of the musicians took a break. And I just sit there and watch, and every individual musician had to play their part down individually. I don't know what that was, but it took up a lot of time, and I just sit there and watched. And I worked with Jack Nitzsche and Artie Butler, and I was in the groove. I was nervous, but once I got into the groove, it was a fantastic time for me.
It's an incredible experience to have too. For what you ended up doing, obviously.
Yeah, you know, I'm from Camden, New Jersey, and I'm up in New York with Phil Spector and Lieber and Stoller. Come on, I was on cloud nine as a musician, and a lot of musicians in Philly just get mad at me because it's hey man, get me on some of them sessions in New York. I said I barely got it in myself, you know. So it was a fantastic time for me, you know, and I was in there during that whole era, and during that time I also met Quincy Jones, who was also first black president of a major record company. And during that time, he was producing Leslie Gore, who had It's My Party. And the guys that I was working for wrote the follow-up, You Don't Own Me. So I was meeting some pretty heavy dudes.
You know, I think I read an interview with you guys once where you talked about, I mean, you're very unique in that you've maintained a hold on your copyrights, for the most part, I think, if not all of them. And I think in the interview I read, you said something along the lines of, because you just mentioned Quincy, and you said, like, you know, you've been fortunate to, you know, to be exposed to some people like Ovid, like Quincy, like Clyde, you know, that basically, you know, you picked up, you know, a certain amount of business acumen from these guys, you know. And can you talk about how you were able to hold on to these things?
Well, I think that the most important part of starting our own label was to have control of the creative process, and also to be able to share in on the publishing and the ownership of the masters, and to have and be able to be the captain of your own destiny, you know. So we worked very hard to build that, you know, and to build other writers and build other producers, and to develop other people who never had a chance to make it in this business. And when we had an outlet to do so, we shared it with others, and it became very profitable for not only for us but for them too. And to be able to hold on to our masters and participate in the future direction of that body of work is very important for us to stay in tune with it, to nurture it, and make sure that it receives the kind of attention that it needs.
Mm-hmm. See, it's too important that before you get into the game, you got to know. So we basically knew about publishing because people that used to talk to us. Mm-hmm. So if you don't say nothing, they ain't gonna say nothing. You know, so basically we knew about publishing, and we knew that was a very lucrative part of the business. And we was always saying, I mean, we write the songs, how's somebody else going to own it? I mean, we had that knowledge, you know, and knowledge is very important.
I think soul is how you feel, you know, and there's really no other way to explain it. It's just how you feel.
Yeah, right.
You know,
from the gut,
yeah,
the heart, the soul. You know, it's like Aretha Franklin when she gets into a tune, she puts her soul. I guess, yeah, it's a feeling. You know, that they put that word to define it. You know, but sometimes me and Gamma be in that room writing that song. The song be grooving so good, we just fall out laughing because it be sounding so great. You know, that's the way I define it. So. A feeling, a certain feeling.
Yeah, it's amazing how, I mean, you know, music can trigger that kind of emotional.
Oh man, sometimes we be cutting some tracks, you know, and we go into control when we listen to the playback. You got to dance. You can't just stand there, you know. You listen to Love Train. You're not just going to sit there. I mean, you're going to either snap your finger, you're going to do something. Yeah. You know, basically, when we're in there writing them songs, that's how I know that we were grooving, because Gamma be dancing in the seat.
We had a ball, man.
Yeah. And,
yeah, we had a real ball. And, you know, soul, listen, man, the inspiration that comes is unexplainable. You can't explain the soul. You know what I mean? You just have to, you got to submit to it, because this music sometimes will make you dance, it'll make you cry, it'll make you laugh, you know what I mean? It'll make you do all kinds of things, you know, and it's got a magnetism to it, you know, music, soul music. And It's not limited to anyone or one person or one group of people. Anybody can have soul. You know what I mean? As long as it's pure and it's real and that's the way you feel.
That Blue Eyes Soul.
Yeah,
They come up with that. The
They come up with that.
Righteous
Try
Brothers,
to, yeah, the Righteous
you know.
Brothers, which was great.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
You know.
But what you guys did, though, just from a production standpoint, I mean, you know, listening to soul music of the '60s, and it's great, and it's stripped down, you know, because you made it much more lush and orchestral. And added, you know, and then of course, like, you know, the 16th notes on the hi-hat too. But I mean, so talk to me about what those elements were for the Philadelphia Soul sound.
Well, you know, Gamble, he knew about orchestrations. You know, I knew about orchestration, and we didn't have a band. We had an orchestra. You know, our army was big. You know, we had a full string section. You know, we utilized every instrument because when I was in school, I used to love the sound of French horns and violins and cellos and vibraphones, and so we incorporated that into our productions. You know, tambourines, maracas, shakers. I mean, we utilized the whole orchestra, and we had some great arrangers. And basically, me and Gamble would hum the parts to the arrangers, because when we wrote the song, we knew exactly how the arrangement should be and what the horn should play, what the guitar should play. We had the whole thing pictured in our mind, how we wanted that song to be orchestrated. And we would never give one of our productions to an arranger and let him have a free hand about it. We was always involved with who should play what.
Yeah.
So you'd be sitting there just writing, when you wrote, you just wrote with the two of you in a room with a piano?
Yeah, Gamble be humming horn parts and
Piano and a tape recorder on top of it. That's how we write. And
the bass had to follow what I'm playing on my left hand, you know, because it was there. In my right hand, you could hear trumpets,
strings, everything.
strings.
You know, so that's how the whole thing worked. The thing worked from the melody of the songs and the music, and also we did give some musicians freedom too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, to
yeah.
be creative.
Improvise.
They wasn't like no robots or nothing. You know, we were like vibing together, and we had a wonderful time together as a unit.
It's important because, you know, these sessions I used to play in New York, the musicians were, you play exactly what's on the chart. That was it, you know. But our productions that's what the musicians would love to play on our sessions, because I believed in freedom. Musicians, they would learn the charts, the basic chart, but we would let them improvise.
Experimentation.
And they would love that. You know?
And sometimes mistakes were wonderful.
Sound good.
They said, no, I want to do it again. Nope, leave it just like that, because you can never do it again. You know, like you make mistakes or whatever the case might be.
Spontaneous.
You know?
We had a lot of spontaneous reaction in our productions. We talk about production. You know what the most important part of a record is? The introduction. That introduction sets the tone for that whole record, and we always believe that after the count off and the introduction, that's when you put that needle on, the introduction's got to grab you. Those first 4 to 6 bars, if that don't get you. So we always believed in that as an exciting part of our records.
You know, that comes through very clearly. You know, what you was just saying about those older recordings, they called engineers balance engineers back then, right? I mean, it was basically
Right.
just kind of like, it wasn't, you know, mic positioning was everything, you know.
That's right.
And I mean, that kind of art, you know, there's a real art to it, you know, and that, I think, and also the idea that most of those great recordings were done with, you know, the rhythm section was in the room, you know.
In the room, everybody did it live. You know what I mean? The singer, everybody live.
Right.
You know.
But what's funny about it was during that time was you get all the way down to the last bar, and somebody made a mistake.
Yeah, go back and do it all over again.
Oh boy,
yeah.
that was. We had some of them too.
Yeah, a lot of times.
So, hey man, what you playing? You know, you had to go back and play it all over again.
Yeah, not like today where you could like edit stuff and put stuff all together and whatever. Now we were going for performances, and that to me made the difference. That the band had to really be satisfied with it. We might take all day long just to do one track.
Yeah,
and we have done that.
Man, we used to drive drummers crazy.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Because, I'm telling you, it's like what I just said about Sinatra. Your songs play like little movies, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can see and there's characters, and there's listen to like Me and Mrs. Jones. It's like that's a movie.
You can see the scenes, right?
Yeah.
I know I don't have that much time, so I'm just trying to. I'm gonna talk to me a little bit about what was going on. You okay? You need some water?
No, yeah, drink it. Well, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I want to know, get your impressions of what was going on in American society in general and the African American community in specific in the early and mid '70s, and how your music kind of taps into, and it was almost like a cause and effect kind of thing that was happening with because your music was a reflection of that culture, but also created to it at the same time.
Well, when I became aware of the conflict between black and white people, because I never even thought about it, to be honest with you. I never had any problems with any white people, nobody. I mean, it was like in the early 60s. And I came home one day, and my brother Charles was looking at television, and there was this scene where these dogs were chasing, the police was putting hoses on. And I asked him, I said, well, what is that? Because I was amazed. He said, this is down. He said, you don't know nothing about this? I said, no. I said, I don't know anything about it. And this was what was going on in this country with that infantile mind, the fear that these people had of black people. It was just unbelievable, in my view, so that affected me. And and I basically was a songwriter, so I really did not get that involved in all of the movements and whatever, but through our music, we were able to write songs that were uplifting and songs that would be like anthems, that would reflect those times. Because with Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and John Kennedy, that was a trying time for this country when this country here was going through those assassinations. And the African American community has always had a very unique relationship with the United States of America. And, even with the drugs that was put into the black community, and it just don't make sense. It just didn't make sense that a country has so much fear about African American people. So I'm really happy to say today I think that fear is loosening up, especially with the younger generation, because there was a time in this country here that the fear of the black man was just almost impossible. It didn't even make any sense at all to me. So I think it came out in some of our music. It came out in our music, and Ship Ahoy was one of the songs that we did. It sounded like it was like a play or a movie script to me, because we had all the sound effects, and what we were shooting for is to try and make everybody, no matter who you are, black, white, brown, red, whatever you are, feel what it was like to be on one of those slave ships and snatched away from your homeland and brought to a place where you were treated less than human. And so those effects still linger in the African American community today, the effects of that time from a psychological standpoint and also from an economic standpoint. So I think that the 60s and of course the 70s played a big role in shaping our mind. That's why Love Train was such a big hit, because we were saying, why can't people, I mean, I don't want to sound like Rodney King or nothing, but why can't people get along? You know what I mean? You know, because it didn't make any sense for people. And it still don't make sense.
Well, the first line of the song was
With people all over the world, right?
First stop.
First stop we're going to make is England, you know. Tell all the folks in Russia and China to, you know, those kind of lyrics and that kind of concept was, hey, let's get together. So we put that record out. It became such a big hit, and still such a big hit, that people really feel like that. I mean, I'm talking about the ordinary people feel like that, you know.